Good morning, everybody. This is Scott Schweitzer, my third in the series of interviews here. I'm with Jonathan Kirkendall. Jonathan, thank you for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for those of you who don't know, I am an attorney, the owner of Prime Estate Planning and Prime Settlement. The first one keeps your family out of court and out of conflict when something happens to you. And the second one works with people to purchase or refinance their real estate properties. So the purpose of these interviews really is to showcase people in my network and how they're connecting with the community during the time of pandemic. Last week, we had an interview with Connie Ryan Roby, which was lovely, and I'm really excited to be with Jonathan today. Jonathan is a psychotherapist specializing in bringing evidence-based, holistic, integrative solutions to anxiety, depression, and trauma. Growing up in Beirut and Tehran, he's been through his share of traumatic events, such as air raids, forced evacuations, and revolutions. These experiences changed his relationship with fear, anxiety, and pain, and brought about an intensely personal and practical journey of working with fear instead of closing down to it. So thank you for being with us here today. I think those experiences will really be great for our audience. And I'm just going to start off with a quick question here. How does psychotherapy work during a time of social distancing?
Yeah, so in some ways, the whole paradigm is shifting, right? In some ways, you know, the original archetype of psychotherapy is that you go into the office and you lay on a sofa with a therapist behind you, you know, and then that's kind of evolved to almost always face-to-face meetings, right? And so with the advent of the pandemic, of the coronavirus, we've all had to make changes, and all of us have had to go online, right? So the Department of Health regulations in DC, even with things opening up, if I were to see a client, we would both have to wear masks the entire session. And so many of us are opting to continue with what's referred to as telehealth or online therapy. And, you know, Scott, it's actually something that I've been doing for a while now. Being a therapist here in DC, I have so many clients who've worked for the World Bank or the State Department. And there have been occasions when someone's left and moved to Berlin or Pakistan or Tanzania. And we've maintained that therapeutic contact through online work. So in some ways, it's not new to me. What's new to me is every single session being online. But I'm finding that it actually works really, really well. I'm actually quite pleased with how it's going.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I can imagine meeting someone even in person wearing masks might not be the experience that you both would want, not being able to see facial expressions, not being able to totally read each other.
Yeah,
and everything.
That's right.
And I'm
that's
glad that
exactly right.
I'm glad that your practice has really moved online. And do you find it draining or difficult to have, you know, Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, or have you found yourself able to adapt as well? And if yes, I'm curious, as a mental health practitioner, how it is that you've shifted personally just to be able to kind of deal with that new reality.
You know what was really interesting for me, and I didn't expect this, is the first 3 or 4 days, my body hurt. Like just sitting in a chair, like looking at a screen is so different than getting up, walking to the waiting room, meeting a client, coming back, kind of stretching, sitting back down again, starting the conversation, moving around. I just like, my right shoulder got really tight. I just was really sore. I ended up going back to my office. I got my office chair. I got the screen from my office. So I had to make just those physical adjustments. So physically it was tiring, trying to get the logistics of where I can sit, where I can see the screen, where I can see my client the best, you know, all that. So physically it was tough. And then there was this sort of mental exhaustion too. I mean, none of us knew what we were doing in a way, right? Like clients would like get online and they'd be like, "Can you hear me? Is this thing working?" You know, and you know, and I'd be like, "Yes, let's go, telehealth, yay!" And then, but in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, how is this going to work out?" So there's some sort of mental exhaustion, I think, that comes with any switch. What I've discovered for myself is while I can easily do 4 or 5 clients in person in a row, back to back, it's harder online. And so this afternoon, I have 2 clients. I have an hour break and I have 2 clients. So during that hour break, I'll be going outside for my mental health, but also for my body, and just walk.
I think that's really important. Yeah, I think getting outside, moving around, being very intentional about it, where before maybe you didn't have to because you had to move around anyway, is really super important during this time. And I found the same thing. You know, we have this shared, like, you know, luncheon meeting, an hour and a half meeting, and that typically, it felt like it was the right amount of time because we'd get there, we'd walk around, we'd mingle with people, we'd have appetizers, we'd shake people's hands, we'd sit down, we could eat while we're at the table. And while we're doing a great job, it's more draining to sit in front of your computer for an hour and a half, even as well orchestrated as it is, not being able to eat, just sort of having to kind of keep the energy level up, trying to keep focusing and avoid that temptation to multitask and do work at the same time.
Oh my gosh, right? And so there's all those technical things too, like turning the notifications off so that I don't get messages across my screen. You know, riot police closing down 8th Street while I'm talking to a client. You know, so there's also just that technical aspect of focus during a session.
And I'm still trying to work out how to get the notifications off on one of my computers here. So that's, you're not alone in facing those challenges.
Oh, good. Yeah, I just hope that like sometimes like I'll be like, oh, I forgot to turn that notification off, and I'm like, I'll just like look into the camera and like not look at the notification until it finally moves off screen, you know. But I think it is, in general, it is more tiring. I mean, one of the things as therapists that we know about Zoom and online therapy is that there's a tiny pause in between what I say and you hearing it and you responding. And that pause throws both of us off. And also, interestingly enough, it actually creates distrust. It says, that pause says we're talking to someone we don't know, or it tells our brain that, right? Tells our brain we're talking to someone we don't know and kind of freezes up a bit. So we have to kind of work past that. But humans are highly adaptable. And I will tell you that I've had some extraordinarily rich, provocative, good sessions over the past 3 months online.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's awesome. The second question I have for you is, how has this crisis impacted mental health issues? And I know we've talked about that just now, but anything else that you'd want to share in that area?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, first of all, I think it ratchets our baseline of anxiety up. Like everyone, like if you were a non-anxious person, you're now maybe an anxious person, right? If you were an anxious person, you may actually now be a very anxious person. So I think it just kind of ratchets up our anxiety. When our anxiety is ratcheted up, we kind of lose peripheral vision. So I think that this whole situation is going to make isolated people feel more isolated. Anxious people feel more anxious. OCD folks are probably dealing with more OCD issues. So I think whatever it is we're dealing with them in a more intense way. But the other thing, Scott, is the intersection of our own personal life with the pandemic, right? So what if in the middle of all of this, you have a miscarriage, right? What if you want to go home and be with your mom when that happens? You can't do that. Your mom can't easily get on a plane and come visit you here. What if you break up with a partner of 3 years who you were pretty sure you were going to marry, and all of a sudden you're in your apartment by yourself all the time, right? And the bars are closed.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go, right? So I think
I've had to struggle that myself. I haven't broken up with a partner, but living alone, being single, I found myself getting irrationally angry with some of my friends who were in relationships for not wanting to just hang out all the time. You know what I mean? So, because I was alone all the time. And so we would set up some Zoom calls and so forth. And I've been great at keeping in contact with my family, but I had to make some real adjustments to my own
That's right.
perspective and realize that, hey, this is not a rational feeling you're experiencing. Like the urge was to call my friends up and dump them one by one, the ones that I've had for a decade or more. And I was like, wait a second,
Yeah.
this is not
Right.
a rational
That's
way
right.
to deal
Yeah.
with the situation. It's kind of a lifeboat situation.
And so that's hard for you as a single person, but also think about couples who aren't getting along very well and for whom that 9-hour break during the day kind of was what they needed away from each other, was what they needed in order to maintain some sort of relationship. And now they're together 24/7 and they're all angry at their single friends. For the same reason, right? They're like, damn it, I could just be a single person right now, right? So I think people just feel stuck.
Yes, and then you have people who are essential workers, like myself, who've been going out to their office or leaving every day, and in my case, biking around, and other people who have been in their apartments the entire time or their houses. And so there's kind of two different realities in some sense, you know what I mean? And some people who are really risk avoidant or concerned about the pandemic, especially in I would say April, they didn't necessarily want to interact physically, even outside or otherwise, with people who were essential workers, people who were traveling, were meeting clients, were exposing themselves because they had to. To them, that was just an extra layer of risk. So I think that's been tough in friendships.
Right. I think you're right. Yeah. I remember early morning when this all started, so maybe 2 months ago, walking my dog and noticing all the traffic at rush hour and thinking to myself, I'm really my reality is not that reality. Like I'm lucky that, I'm an essential worker as well, but it's easy enough for me to move online, right? But there are people who can't move online. They can't do their work at home. Because of the nature of their work. And my heart just really, I'm grateful that they're going on. I'm also just aware of the sort of ongoing anxiety that they must feel as well.
Yes, and I think it's, you think about people that are in the healthcare industry and work at supermarkets, and that's super important. Those people are essential workers. But even for me, I have the two parts of my practice, the one being the estate planning. I've pivoted and taken that completely virtual. But the real estate settlement, while you might think, okay, that can be done virtually as well, the laws in DC and other jurisdictions have not caught up. So you still require in-person settlements, notarizations, paper documents, scanning, mailing, FedExing. And it's actually, for me, it's really highlighted ways in which our laws need to keep up with the reality of the situation, but also what we have available technologically. There's no reason we should be having to have that kind of redundancy.
Do you have to take special precautions during those meetings? You must.
Well, luckily the staff here is really good about cleaning everything up, and I work in a WeWork, and in this office, there's almost nobody here, so it's not that risky. But we wear masks and so forth. We sit at far end of the conference table, so we're not close to each other. I still am able to convey warmth and do this sort of a handshake or maybe the elbow bump a little bit, but it's a different situation. You know what I mean?
It's odd, isn't it? It's just odd.
It is. So a third question I have for you is, what are some things that we can do to help each other at this time?
Well, one thing I would say is don't dump your friends, right? Reach out more. I do find that I'm like, I at the beginning of all of this, we were doing a lot of like Zoom happy hours, but after like days and days and days of meeting with clients on Zoom all day long, I am ready to close my computer down at night. So we're just doing that on special occasions now, but we are texting a lot. I text a lot. I'm also keeping in touch with my colleagues, which I find very important. Just email chains, right? Just checking in with the people who I share my office. There are four of us, 3 therapists and 1 acupuncturist in my suite. We all work for ourselves, right? So we're not financially tied to each other, but these are people who I've run into every single day for 10 years, right? And then suddenly suddenly they're not in my life, right? So I'm reaching out to them. I'm reaching out to other friends in the neighborhood that I've come to know, and I'm texting, I'm emailing, and just checking in, saying hi. I also think that we need to, for each other, we need to check in with people who we may not have heard from in a while. The other thing that I think is really important, if you hear of someone who's suffered a loss many times, like in ordinary circumstances, I think that our gut reaction is to be like, I don't know what to say, so I'm just going to wait and not say anything. I think we need to push through that, because nobody knows what to say, right? But saying something is always appropriate. Saying, hey, I heard about your grandfather's loss. I heard that you lost your mom. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Call me if you want, right? The other thing that I think, this is one of the things that I'm offering folks, is you know, Scott, if you have friends in need, or your listeners have friends who are just like, I really need help, but this whole telehealth thing is like, I don't know how to navigate it. I don't know how to find a therapist. I am happy to take a free 15, 30-minute phone call just to help people navigate the system and to listen to them. I think there's a mental health crisis in this country. We know that, but it's also really hard to find mental health services. So I think, you know, telling people, hey, have you thought about talking to someone, can be a really useful thing. The other thing, and this is something I specifically wanted to tell you and people who are viewing this, there's a text number for people in crisis, and that number is 741-741, and that's the crisis line. It's a suicide crisis line, right? So if people are in a crisis, not just suicide, but if they're in a mental health crisis, we know that people are much more apt to text than to call. So people can text the word home to 741-741, and someone from the crisis hotline will be right there. Well, so just like you knowing that, your listeners knowing that, I think that's a really useful number to keep handy these days.
No, that's perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And anyone who's out there, when we post this, you know, feel free to contact Jonathan if you have any questions. If you feel like you would benefit from having a consultation with him, if you are looking for a way to get in contact with him, you can also contact me. I'm always happy to share his information, and that's perfect. You know, and one other point I wanted to make is that, so for example, another way to communicate is social media. And I historically have been the kind of person that I would use Instagram, and I would post, you know, pictures of my family over the holidays, cute pictures when I was on vacation, but I really didn't engage much, and I wasn't really that active. But in the last month or so, I've been doing a lot more on social media, both as a way to connect with clients and potential clients for business, but also I found that a lot of people that have been commenting and sharing my posts have been friends and family members that I maybe would be in contact otherwise. So it's had this great secondary effect that I didn't realize was going to happen.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and social media isn't for everybody. You have to kind of really think about how you're going to use it. But I think that it has a greater potential beneficial role right now than it would at almost any other time.
You know, yeah, it's funny because I feel like I've spent my psychotherapy career telling people, you know, be careful about social media. Like maybe you want to pull back from social media. And now I'm like, full on, go social media, at least for the time being, right?
And I think it depends on what you mean by social media. For example, we all want to be informed and so forth, but I found myself and my friends that are staying at home watching the news on TV continuously. The news is scary, and it's part of their job to scare us, or in order so that we're attracted, so that we want to listen to it.
That's right. Yeah.
Being immersed in that news cycle 24/7, I think has proven to be really anxiety provoking for people, and it doesn't allow them to get out into a place where they're having positive thoughts, where they're being creative. They're just bogged down. And I think that social media can be the same way. So if you're following posts where people are terrified, outraged, angry, whatever, and people may have the right to feel that way, but you really have to be conscious about what you are consuming and how that's affecting your day-to-day existence.
I think that's so true, especially because right now we're all isolated, right? And we don't kind of have that buffer of running into other people and kind of buffering that. Sorry, there's my dog. It must be, maybe that's a food delivery downstairs. But I think you're right. I think, and now is the time to really pick the people who you are going to be hanging out with and sharing your space, whether it's space outside eating together, or if you're a social media space, your social media space, right?
Right. And here in DC now, we are finally, as of last Friday, opening up a little bit. So, you can go out. I, for example, Saturday night went by myself out to a nice restaurant outside. I wouldn't typically go by myself in DC to a nice restaurant. It just wouldn't not what I would do. But I was like, I want to experience my city again, to kind of feel like I am part of making people feel comfortable getting back out in the streets. And, I brought my mask, which happened to match with my outfit. So that was cute. But part of this, reimagining the city as a place that's becoming open and vibrant again. Is really, for me, it's important. I know not doesn't mean that everybody has to go out into the streets right away and feel comfortable with that. But if you're sitting on the fence, and if it's not a health-related issue, I find that it helped my mental health to be able to get out there again and feel like I had a purpose in walking around
and I think it can be a little scary. We're so used to staying in, right? That being out can be a little bit like the first time I drove after being, maybe like mid-March or end of March, it would have been end of March. I was like, wait, do I remember how to drive? Right. So you'd be like, go to a restaurant and be like, wait, do I remember how to read the menu and order food? And but we'll all adapt. This morning I ran into my office to pick up some stuff, and there were a couple of people sitting outside in the coffee shop on the ground floor of my office building. And they both were wearing masks, and they were sitting 6 feet apart, and they were having a conversation. But boy, it made my heart happy. I was like, this rocks, like two people drinking coffee together outside. It was awesome.
Something you wouldn't notice at all before. And what I've noticed too is utilization of technologies. The restaurants I've been to, you download an app or you use an app and you scan a barcode that's on the tables. So you get their digital menu as opposed to them printing out actual menus. And just thought, okay, that's a cool way to deal with this right now. So there are people out there are businesses out there that are innovating to allow us to slowly go back into the normal stream of life without taking undue risks. So I've been by that.
Yeah, and I actually think the same thing is happening in healthcare. Just to bring this back to online therapy, I think that over the next several months, I'm going to be seeing innovations. I know that the quality of online therapy has vastly improved. Even from March, the pictures are clearer. There's no freezing. So I think that we're going to continue to see technology coming to the aid of folks as we navigate this crisis.
Good. Well, that's a great thing. The final question I had for you was, and I think we may have covered this, but if we haven't, how are you adjusting your practice here in DC to reach people who may need mental health care? I know we covered that. If there's anything else you'd like to say on that topic.
Yeah, not just me, but I know that other therapists too are offering and advertising a sliding scale. Like, I'm really happy to adjust my fee for someone who has had a financial hit during this time, especially if they've lost a job. And it's a very scary time, and their depression is overwhelming them, or their anxiety is overwhelming them. I'm happy to lower my rate and talk to them about what they can afford. I've also, for all of my ongoing clients, I've also offered a 30-minute check-in in between sessions. And almost every week, someone takes me up on that. They don't want a full session, but during this time of social distancing and isolation, it's nice for them to have that 30-minute check-in. So I have a sliding scale now, which is new for my practice. Also the 30-minute check-in, and offering to talk to folks for free on the phone. If they're just trying to navigate and just want some general information, I'm happy to talk to them on the phone about that.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
well, this is great. You're great at the interviewing online thing here. And I really think a lot of the things we touched upon, a lot of the advice that you gave is really super valuable for our listeners right now. So anything else you'd like to add before we sign off here?
No, thank you so much for the opportunity, Scott. It was good for me too to sort of think about those questions and to organize my thoughts around them. So it was helpful for me too. So
Good.
best of luck to you in your business as we both kind of navigate this these uncertain times.
Right. No, that's perfect. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you virtually on
All right.
Thursday.
That's right. Take care, Scott. Bye-bye.
You too. Take care.